Hello, my friends. Today, title of the horror story is The Whispers in the Pines. There's a place up north, tucked away in a forgotten part of the state, where the pines grow thick and the air feels heavy. The locals call it Whistler's Hollow, though most people don't call it anything at all. They just avoid it. Travelers who've wandered in by mistake report strange feelings of being watched, sounds in the trees, and an unshakable chill no matter the weather. Martha Halloway had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. But stories were just stories to her, nothing more than gossip meant to scare children. And besides, she had no choice. She'd inherited her grandfather's old cabin on the edge of Whistler's Hollow, and with nowhere else to go, she packed up her life and moved in. The cabin wasn't much. A creaking wooden structure, surrounded on all sides by towering pines. Her grandfather, who she'd barely known, had lived there alone for decades. As she unpacked, she found strange keepsakes. Crude wooden carvings of human figures, dusty old notebooks filled with nonsensical scribbles, and most unsettling of all, dozens of earthen jars hidden under the floorboards. Each jar had a small animal bone inside. Martha felt a chill creep into her spine, but pushed it off as superstition. Grandpa was probably just eccentric, she told herself. The first night, Martha hardly slept. The wind howled through the trees, and the house groaned as though shifting on its foundation. But there was something else, too, soft whispers drifting through the walls, just faint enough to make her question whether she heard them at all. She got up, lit a lantern, and peered outside. The pines swayed in the wind, their shadows long and jagged. Nothing unusual. It's just the wind, she thought, and she forced herself back to bed. By the third day, the feeling of being watched became unbearable. Martha couldn't shake the sense that someone or something stood just beyond the trees, staring at her. Whenever she stepped outside, the forest felt too still. There were no birds singing, no rustle of wildlife, just silence, broken only by her own breath. That night, the whispers returned. They're coming back. The words were faint but clear, like they were spoken just behind her ear. Martha froze in her bed, clutching the blanket. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. Silence. Then, faint laughter, a child's laugh, echoed from outside the cabin. It sent her heart racing. She grabbed her lantern and, against her better judgment, stepped onto the porch. "Hello? Is someone out there?" The forest loomed around her, a black void of twisted branches and shadows. And then she saw it, a figure standing just beyond the tree line. At first, it looked like a child, small and hunched, but as her eyes adjusted, the shape became wrong. Its limbs were too long, its movements jerky and unnatural. And its face, there was no face at all, just smooth, pale skin. The figure turned and disappeared into the trees. Martha slammed the door shut, bolted it, and spent the rest of the night in the corner of the room, clutching a kitchen knife. Morning brought little relief. Martha decided she couldn't stay another night in that cabin. As she packed, she noticed something strange outside the window. Small piles of rocks and twigs, arranged in crude shapes like stick figures. They hadn't been there the day before. Desperate to leave, she grabbed her things and fled into the woods, hoping to find the road back to town. But the deeper she went, the more turned around she became. The forest all looked the same, rows of identical trees stretching endlessly. And then, the whispers began again. "They're coming. You can't leave." Panicking, Martha ran. Branches scratched her face, roots tangled her feet, but she kept running, until she stumbled into a clearing. Her stomach dropped. It was the cabin. Somehow, she had circled back. By nightfall, the whispers were louder. The laughter echoed from all around the cabin, and the figures began appearing, just at the edge of her vision, moving between the trees. They came closer as the hours passed, until she could see them through the windows. Dozens of them, pale and faceless, standing motionless in the dark. Martha locked every door and window, but it didn't matter. Around midnight, she heard footsteps inside the cabin. Soft, deliberate footsteps. The lantern flickered. A creak came from the doorway. Martha turned, and there, standing in the doorway, was her grandfather. Or rather, something that looked like him. His face pale and stretched, his smile unnaturally wide. "You shouldn't have come here, Martha," he said in a voice that wasn't his own. Then, everything went black. When the search party found Martha days later, the cabin was empty. There were no signs of a struggle, but the trees around the cabin were filled with strange carvings, faceless figures etched into the bark. Martha was never found. Locals say if you wander too close to Whistler's Hollow, you can still hear her voice whispering in the wind. Others claim they've seen her standing among the trees, pale, still, and faceless. And if you're ever foolish enough to go looking for her, remember, the forest doesn't like visitors, and it never lets them leave. This is the end of story. Hope you like it. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to the channel. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.